Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. I'm your host, Chelsea Beller. Joining me on the Ghost Couch today are Brea Grant and Chelsea Stardust. I met them over the summer when they were shooting their independent horror film, Grind, an anthology of horror shorts all about the grind. I worked as the stage manager at the production company where they shot quite a bit of their film, and I even got to be an extra, so you might see me in it. Thankfully, they were ever so kind to be on the show. We discuss the movies that made them, their favorite horror films of 2024, and loads more. Enjoy! Isn't he soft? Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. Today we have Brea Grant and Chelsea Stardust and, Rigby here with us today.
I feel like an evil villain. Stroking my cat.
Yes. Chelsea Stardust is a director and producer known for Satanic Panic, Into the Dark, a number of short films, features, and music videos. Brea Grant, you might recognize her from Heroes, Dexter, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and many more. But more recently, she's been focusing on writing and directing and producing, right?
When I have to.
Whatever, right? 12-hour shift. Torn Hearts, and Brea and Chelsea's most recent project, Grind, which I had the pleasure of working with them on, which was really fun.
I just saw the scene y'all were in, actually. Y'all are both in the same scene. I just watched a cut of it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Am I the star of the...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Who is she? Who's that babe?
Who's that babe? Well, welcome. Thank you both for being on the show. It means a lot because you guys are like super horror babes. Oh. So it means a lot to me.
We are.
Yeah.
Define that term.
It is a great term that I have coined because it can mean a myriad of things. It can mean a horror fan. Uh-huh. It can mean a lady horror fan. It can mean someone who's worked on horror. Okay. Stop being so twitchy.
Sorry. I'm instigating.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I like it.
Yeah, it's all encompassing.
I just want to know what we're being,
Yeah. Who are you?
Who are you? What are you calling us?
Yeah. First of all, can you talk about Grind? And what... Such a stupid question. Was it a grind to make?
I love it. We love it.
First time I've been asked that.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Sick.
I think they're all grinds to make. Every movie, like halfway during the movie, I'm like, should I keep doing this as a job? I probably should not keep doing this as a job.
Every movie's a miracle.
Yeah, a miracle, or like, what's the
nightmare?
opposite of it? Yeah. It's always hard to talk about a movie. The movie won't probably hit festivals for another year, so it's always tough. But it is an anthology movie about centered around the subject of like crappy day jobs, side hustles, and modern capitalism, late stage capitalism.
Which I love that, because I think we do need to talk about that. Corporations are the worst. I think it's good that we bring this stuff to light, and what better way than horror?
Yeah, and something about gig work, the gig economy, which so many people in this industry, in the entertainment industry, are doing, because it's so hard to survive as just a writer, just a director, just a producer. Mm-hmm. Now everyone has things. People don't even know all the things that people are doing to get by, because also the industry has changed so much, and we've gone through a pandemic and multiple strikes and things like that. So we just need to get by, just to survive. It's well, what else can we do that isn't going to tax us so much that our creative side suffers? So it's finding that balance of okay, what can I do to make money, but also still be able to not be sacrificing, too much time, totally. So I can still do all the creative stuff I need to get done. Yeah. And we're also all versed at multitasking, so... Yes. But it was, I do not think it was a grind, making Grind, but there's always things that happen. You have to expect the unexpected. There's always things that are going to come up, issues you have to deal with. and it's just getting through the week. It's like, okay, we got to get through this week. And also because it's an anthology,
Right.
Brea directed 2 segments of it, and then 2 segments are directed by her partner in crime, Ed. And so it's being able to prep for the next week while focusing on what's currently happening. But once you get the wheels moving on that, like, okay, what do we have to get done for next week? And filmmaking is there's so much prep, but there's also so much like looking ahead. Things happen in a day, in 3 days, in 12 hours, in 2 hours. It's kind of managing that. How quickly does something need to get done? Like casting, you start early to cast, but then you start getting nervous because you're like, this role is like in a week, and my directors need to be able to talk to this actor, be able to rehearse maybe. You never know. So it's, you're always just at an 11. Even talking about it, I'm getting anxious. But you know what? It all comes together at the 11th hour. Yeah. For me, this is something I produced. Usually I'm directing and writing. But it's making sure my directors are being taken care of, and that it's bringing like Brea and Ed's vision to life, and making sure it's as close to what they want or what we're able to achieve. Right. On budget, days, all of that stuff. Yeah. So, honestly, I think the grind comes when you're in post. I think that's because that's when your movie's coming together. So that's when you're really trying to get all the parts going.
That's so true. Are you experiencing that with post right now?
Yeah. It's a different kind of experience, right? I mean, I think being on set and shooting is very physical, and it's physically taxing, it's emotionally taxing, but it's just like it's almost like it's like running a sprint, whereas post to me always feels like a marathon, where it's just it's not physically taxing, it's just mentally taxing, trying to figure out what actually works and realizing that there's so many options. And my brain, which can actually be kind of like math oriented, doesn't love that there's so many options. So I spend a lot of time like exploring a lot of options that I'll never use. But so we're honing in on a cut.
Yeah. That's gonna be great. Do you remember the very first horror movie you watched?
Yes, I think movies. My horror love comes from literature, but if I'm thinking about movies, I want to say like Todd Browning's Dracula, the Bela Lugosi Dracula. My parents we used to watch the Universal monster movies at Halloween. I feel like that was one that was like age appropriate, and was the first one. It's one of my favorite movies, obviously. That's what first comes to mind. Like if I'm thinking back, like what is the earliest I can remember? Probably that one. Yeah.
I'm of the age where children's TV and movies, TV shows and movies were really dark, like dark fantasy. And so I always think about those, like Return to Oz is one that I think about as being a horror movie, even though it's not. Right. It's technically a fantasy movie,
but it's dark.
But it's really dark, and that one really stuck with me. That, or like Labyrinth, like movies like that, which are technically, I think, they're more fantasy, but for me, those feel like the first horror I was experiencing. Yeah, where I was truly scared.
Yeah, I think there's gateway horror in those for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I like that term. Yeah, gateway horror.
I guess if you want to count, just considering if I'm thinking way back to being a kid, I mean, I loved Sleeping Beauty. If we're talking like Disney as like a young child, what are you being shown? You're showing animation. Yeah, I remember my parents showing me that and loving that, and because I like old Disney. That's even though I'm like born in the 80s but a child of the 90s, I like the way back Disney. Black Cauldron, Sword in the Stone, etc. But Maleficent is like maybe first crush. Yeah, like totally. So if we're going way back, that's probably, or like Skeleton Dance. I remember watching that cartoon. My parents showed me Frank and Weenie, like the live action one. But movie would, if we're talking like more adult,
would you say those movies inspired you to make horror, or was there something later on that inspired you to actually create horror later on?
I feel like I grew up at a very like horror friendly time. So like when I was a teenager, I'm a little older than Chelsea, but when I was a teenager, like I saw Scream in the movie theater with my friends, not knowing what it was. Like walking in and just seeing Scream in the theater was really influential for me. Like it felt to me like I don't, I mean, at the time I didn't want to be a filmmaker, but I
Right.
really liked it.
Yeah.
And I think it really influenced my taste. That and like teen girl slumber parties where we would go and rent horror movies and watch together, which I think was a story a lot of us have.
Totally.
That we were watching so many horror movies when we were, teenagers, not able to leave the house but wanted some sort of thrill. So yeah, I think it was just like the horror just kind of kept coming into my world. And then when I started acting, I just kind of started acting in genre stuff more and more. And once you do kind of one genre thing, you get invited to do more. And I loved the audience. I loved what people were making, and I liked the scene. The horror scene was really nice compared to some of the other stuff I did.
Right.
So for when it came to wanting to make stuff, it just made sense for me to stay in a genre I already liked and felt accepted by.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of something that really struck me was I saw Night of the Living Dead, the original, when I was 10. And it really just shook me to my core.
Yeah.
And I was sort of fascinated by it. But I was raised in a house that there was video cameras, like, for birthday parties and Halloween parties and things like that. And so I would pick up the camera and shoot things. So I think I was always, and my parents are artists, so I always gravitated towards the arts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking back, like high school is when I really started to take like Super 8 filmmaking classes and things like that. And I knew I wanted to do that because I watched so many movies in general, like cinema in general. But I think horror specifically, aside from same thing as Brea, like sleepovers with your best friend, renting horror movies.
Yeah.
I was with my best friend since kindergarten, and her and I rented American Psycho, the Mary Harron.
Yeah.
Which came out, I think, in 2000. And I had also read the book. And so
really?
I was like, oh my God, a woman made this movie? Women wrote this movie?
Yeah.
I was so like into that.
Totally.
And also having seen Pet Sematary by Mary Lambert. And so that's when I was like, oh yeah, women can do this and are really good at it.
Yeah.
And I loved Near Dark. So that's when I really felt connected to the genre, and also seeing like Halloween sort of didn't know the term final girl quite yet, but recognizing how prominent women were in these movies, and then seeing women making these movies. But I remember seeing American Psycho and being blown away by it.
Wow.
So that's probably what was sort of steering me towards, as a cinema lover in general, but steering me towards the genre.
Yeah. Who are your horror filmmaker inspirations?
It's interesting who, like, obviously I was naming a couple people, but obviously, like, John Carpenter, is a big one for me. And for me, it's there's a lot of directors in general, not necessarily horror, but when you're younger and you're watching these movies, obviously I mentioned Catherine Bigelow, Mary Lambert, Mary Harron, you look at Amy Holden Jones, just under Slumber Party Massacre. Yeah. But as I got older, came out and became, was in the industry, and then you go from like fan to filmmaker, and then they're your peers, which all of a sudden you like cross over to that. And then you think about, I still meet people today where I was like, oh my God, I remember the moment I saw your movie, and I was like, that thing in that movie I loved and want to used in a movie of mine. Like or I'll talk to someone like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how did you achieve that? I will call something a horror movie even if someone else does not. I'm very loosey-goosey with my classification. Mm-hmm. Like Green Room to me is a horror movie. I don't know if everyone would call it that. Or Nightcrawler is a horror movie to me. I don't know if everyone would call it that.
Okay.
So I'm a little squishy with mine. But there's so many. But honestly, there's just a lot of women who are sort of paving the way. Like Brea was making features before I was making features. So watching her journey, that's what inspires me. Our friends who make movies inspire me because it's a win for all of us.
Yeah.
And of course, there's like so many people I can list.
Totally.
I have a massive movie collection. And, I have an Alfred Hitchcock tattoo. But I also have a John Waters tattoo. So my taste is all over the place. And a lot of them are wonderful people too. So that's a very broad answer to your question.
No, I love it. I just want an honest answer, and that was it. How about you?
I'll second that I feel like we're in a really good time for horror, and a lot of people are making great horror, and it's people we know, which is like incredibly exciting. I tend to go for more like fun horror. The people that I like a lot, like I really love like Edgar Wright early stuff. I kind of like tend towards like stuff that it tends up being very fun and very dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
But then there's just so many modern people that I think, not that those guys aren't modern, are making really cool stuff. I mean, Jordan Peele. Like, there's just so many.
Yeah.
It's such a hard question. I feel like horror fans get asked, like, "What's your favorite horror movie?" And you're like, and like then I can't think of a single horror movie.
Right.
What's a horror movie?
What's a horror movie?
I know, and I'm like, and I don't have like favorites. Like, I don't have a favorite book or movie, so it's kind of a weird.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just too loosey goosey.
No,
I flow with the wind,
and it always changes.
Yeah,
That's the other thing is like
it changes all the time.
I'll fall into these like right now, which is I'm in a big Michael Powell and Rick Pressburger like binge.
Okay.
Also talk about maybe one of the most visual directors who make the most beautiful Technicolor. Nobody made movies like them in terms of visually how they looked.
Right.
And a lot of people know Peeping Tom, but I've been doing, and Red Shoes, but I've been doing a very deep dive into Michael Powell and then them together directing. So it's just, it changes.
Yeah.
Like, it's always changing. And then also we're lucky to have great mentors too, I think, which is helpful. Whose work I love, like being able to watch, you know, Lee Winnell direct or James Wan direct, or I'm a big fan of Chris Landon's work, and people who, because of all my time at Blumhouse, I'm able to like call and say, hey, how did you achieve this shot? Can we talk about that real quick? Like, you know, and so that changes all the time because we're always consuming and seeing new stuff we love.
If you could take an already made horror film and make it your own as a remake, as a sequel, as a prequel, whatever, what movie would that be?
I mean, we pitch on stuff like that all the time, so I was like, I don't know.
Some of it we don't want to talk about because we don't want to jinx it.
For sure.
Mine would probably be Tremors. This is one I say often. I feel
I
like
love
in interviews,
Tremors.
but yeah, I like that movie. It's fun.
So good.
Fun practical effects.
Yeah.
Fun people. I like a good cast with like a lot of people in it, an ensemble.
Yeah.
That's like one that could happen.
Right?
Thanks.
I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah,
I want
Brea
you to
Grant
make
Tremors.
it.
Thanks.
Yeah. There's a couple things that I really want to do, but I'm always scared to talk about them because I'm like, then the possibility might go away of that happening. Especially if it
I don't think so. If you put it out there,
you gotta manage.
Yeah.
Stardust wants to redo, you know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Josh Rubin really wants to do Dark Man. And I feel like he talks about it so much that people. Yeah. I feel like maybe he's getting a shot at it at some point, or people talked about it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe y'all don't hear about this on the internet like I do. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's. I guess if we're talking movies, because there's books I would love to adapt, but then you sort of think about is that possible? But I would love to make Heart Shaped Box, the Joe Hill book into a movie. It's incredible.
Oh.
It's really, really scary. And I think like I'm always looking on IMDb Pro of like what is happening with this stuff. Like someone was making it 7 years ago.
Oh.
It's like hasn't been made yet. Stephen King's Joyland.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to make that. I'd love to make Desperation, which was a miniseries. Like I would love to remake that.
How cool.
So there's a lot of books I feel like I read and would love to bring to life.
Right.
Also Geek Love, the Catherine Dunn book, also feels like an impossible.
Yeah.
Like Del Toro should be making that. Like I don't know how you do it, but it's sort of like things in that space. And there are movies I've seen, especially movies not necessarily in the horror genre, but from like the 60s or 70s. So I'm always looking at that stuff. And I did see a movie recently that my writing partner and I have decided to secretly remake. Like not actually officially reach out for the rights, but I'm like, what if you took this noir movie but made it horror?
Yeah.
Like what if you took that and made it, and I'm thinking of doing something
that.
like Repo Man or Kiss Me Deadly, which if you've seen those movies, you kind of know there's a similar thing in them.
That's cool.
So that's what I'm like, how can I do this in a sneaky way?
Oh my God. I love those answers. Yeah. Oh, I love Tremors, I feel like was probably for me the thing that got me into horror.
Yeah.
So
Even
good.
though it's funny because it's a movie that happens mostly during the day and
Yes.
you just think of horror as like nighttime,
Yeah.
spooky, scary.
Yeah.
But that, hello again.
But there's some great daytime horror movies. I mean,
That's true.
Like,
Yeah,
I mean, they're
yeah.
just Midsommar. How do you say the name of that movie?
Yeah.
I love a daytime horror movie, and because they're so
I
rare.
do too.
Yeah.
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 Big fan.
Yeah.
We just manifested Tremors. So.
We did, because we're witches.
That's right.
Any upcoming projects that you're able to share?
Well,
No.
Grind
We
is-
have Grind is
Grind is
taking a
one.
while.
That's top of the list.
If
of,
people,
like,
Yeah.
if people are interested, we are documenting the making of Grind in a podcast called Anthology, where we're talking about making the movie, and we're talking about horror anthology, so people can definitely go check that out if they want to hear more about Grind.
I'll drop a link to it.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a great, like, for anyone interested in filmmaking or the process of filmmaking, it's a really great peek behind the curtain. The episodes are very honest about what it is like and the process of making it. There's people who have also made anthologies talking about their experiences.
Nice.
So it's a really good filmmaking lesson, I guess, to hear from those people. But
I'm learning a lot making it. There's so much I'm learning. Really? Yeah. People come on and they say things, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. That's good to know.
That's cool. Yeah.
Well, also it's that weird thing where filmmakers, we are friends with each other, but you don't necessarily talk to each other about your craft all the time.
True.
So like, and I love craft and thinking about the craft and how many other ways can I say the word craft? It's been an interesting way to like connect with filmmakers and actually ask them about that outside of like our friendship, like actually go into like the details of and the nitty gritty of it.
yeah,
I love that.
I feel like people get so annoyed when we're asked in a large capacity, like a Q&A or something, about what are you working on now, because there's so much. And honestly, that just has to do with like we said, every movie's a miracle, and sometimes we can't talk about stuff because a contract's not done.
Totally.
Or like there's so many variables, and then I've been asked about movies that I was attached to like 10 years ago. I still get asked about it. I was like, I gotta take that off my IMDb.
But it's hard. It's really hard to get stuff off your IMDb.
It's hard. Yes. It's
There are
hard.
things that like
Is
I
it
have
really?
tried to get off. Yeah.
Oh my
There's like
God.
movies that it has said that I like, especially as an actress, that I'm like attached to that haven't been made, and I'm like, this movie's never getting made. Why is this on here?
Yeah. But right now I'm working on something that I'm in the process of casting a movie that I'm directing that is basically a retelling of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. But it's my homage to I Know What You Did Last Summer, an urban legend.
Nice.
So I'm really infusing a lot of that into it.
Wow.
Hopefully shooting at the top of next year. But we're actively casting right now.
Yeah.
And then I have another script that we just attached cast to that we're actively looking for financing for, ideally also for next year.
Sweet.
And then others working on scripts and things like that. But those are the two that feel the closest to happening.
Well, if you need a PA or an extra.
Yeah.
And then the dreaded question that you don't have to have one answer. What is your current favorite scary movie?
Oh, current.
I cheated and looked at my list because so I'll let Brea think about.
Yeah, hold on, I have to look.
Yeah, I have a list.
I literally have to
I'll
refer
just,
to Letterboxd.
Yeah, ones this year I loved. Strange Darling, I loved.
So good.
So
still
good.
haven't
I'm also
watched that.
like, I love Kyle Gallner. He knows I love him. But I just think he's an incredible actor, and I'm so happy to see getting so much like The Passenger was one of my favorite movies. I think that was last year. He was in. I loved The Substance. I loved Heretic. I loved In a Violent Nature. This is a great year. Great every year. Every year is a good year, I feel like. Once I kind of like look at my list and think about all the stuff I've seen, it's pretty substantial. But those are ones that when I was looking through my list, it was like, oh yeah, those are ones I want to talk about.
Yeah, those are really good.
Yeah.
A movie I just saw that I really liked was Humanist Vampire Seeks Consenting Suicidal Person. That movie was amazing.
Oh, good to know.
It's French Canadian, I believe.
Oh.
I think it's French Canadian. It's in French, and it's about a vampire who doesn't want to kill people, so she's seeking a person who is suicidal, so she can make his dreams come true. But then it's also like kind of a romance. It's so wonderful. This movie like took me by complete surprise, and I loved it.
I'm gonna see it.
So wonderful. Such
I have to find
wonderful
that
movie. Another horror movie, this like horror sci-fi I saw this year that I feel like hasn't gotten any love. It may not be out yet. I saw it at Fantastic Fest. Is You Are the Universe, which is the first movie they finished it's a Ukrainian movie, and I think the first movie that's been finished in the Ukraine since they started shooting it before the war and they finished it recently.
Wow.
And it all takes place as one guy in space after the world explodes. So it's like
Whoa.
sort of space horror.
That's great.
That's
more
wild.
sci-fi than horror, but I thought that one I loved this year.
Yeah.
That was amazing. A lot of good movies this year.
Yeah.
A lot of good horror.
Great. Well, this was wonderful. Thank you both so much. It was just wonderful to talk to you guys again, and I know we'll connect more in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah. Thanks, babes. Thank you for joining us on the Ghost Couch for a chat with a couple of horror babes. This video goes up right before Thanksgiving, so before I go, I want to say thank you to all of my horror babes, my subscribers, my Patreon members, my supporters, my friends, my family. I'm undoubtedly grateful for you all. This channel wouldn't be what it is without any of you. Thank you again to Brea and Chelsea for being on the show. If you enjoyed this interview, feel free to check out my other interviews and my new Friday episode, where I interview filmmakers from the Film Quest Film Festival that I attended last month. It was such a hoot. Each of these interviews are crazy insightful into the horror making process, so I definitely recommend giving those a try. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd to see what I'm watching and what I'm rating. Bye, babe.